Hey guys, welcome to the NRL Round 14 Betting Trend Report preview video for the upcoming round. All 7 games this weekend. So one game short than usual with 3 teams having the bye. Dolphins, Raiders, and Roosters all not playing this weekend. Firstly, straight off the bat, the first thing you want to pay attention to this weekend for these teams is if their key players are going to back up from Origin. Sometimes the games played on Friday night's not too badly affected, but Saturday can be affected. Generally, most players back up for the Sunday games. But before we get into this weekend, where I go through all the games, what the odds are, what the past odds are, and the betting trends, and also what I'm thinking of betting in these games, we'll quickly look back on last weekend. So round number 13. Only the 5 games, so spread out round from Thursday through to Sunday. Of the 5 games, 3 of them went under the total points line. 2 of them went over. The games that went over, the Eels, Sharks, and then the Dolphins and Raiders. Interestingly, 4 of the 5 away teams covered the spread, and 4 of the 5 away teams won their games outright. So that's a bit of a swing around from what was happening prior to that. For the couple of weeks prior, a lot of home teams winning and covering, and this is what ends up happening a lot throughout the season, and that's why paying attention to these kind of trends does matter a lot. So far this year, home sides do have a winning record overall, so that's what I'm talking about against the spread. There is a winning record. So the fact that the away team swung it around a little bit, what's happening there is those away sides, their spreads are being pushed out a little bit more than they should be to try and even those numbers up. Also, there's a big weekend for the underdogs as well, largely due to the fact that teams are being affected by players being out. But underdogs covered 4 of the 5 games. The only favorite that did cover was the Eels versus the Sharks. That also means that underdogs won 4 of the 5 games outright too. Cowboys obviously being the biggest of those. They're paying around the $6 mark. Over the past few weeks now, underdogs have now covered 15 of the last 21 games. And they've also won 9 of the last 12 games outright. So definitely not a time to be backing lots of favorites in the NRL over the past few weeks. So now looking ahead to this weekend's games, the Friday night game is Dragons versus the West Tigers. Not really like a super exciting game to kick off the round. But I understand why they have positioned it here. Dragons are 7.5-point favorites. They have won 4 of the past 5 versus the Tigers. However, the Tigers have covered 3 of the past 4. Dragons won and covered the most recent matchup. Tigers started favorite in that game. That was round 6 this season. So a bit of a swing around since then. Interestingly, the underdog has covered the past 4 in this matchup. The Dragons come into this off the win last week against the Panthers, but prior to that, they were awful against the Bulldogs. And then you've got the Tigers coming off the bye, but also on an 8-game losing streak. So it makes it very hard to trust either side. And like this is one of the advantages you have as a bettor. You don't need to, pick a side and force a bet in this game, even though it's the only Friday night game. The main trend that stands out with this game also is 12 of the past 14 head-to-head have gone under the total points line, and we're getting 47.5 points. So it's a fairly high total points line. So definitely leaning towards the under. If I had to choose a side or a bet for, who's going to win, I'd definitely be looking at like the either side, 1 to 10 or 1 to 12. I feel like we could get, the $1.75, $1.80 mark for that play. Especially considering like a lot of the recent games have been fairly close, especially with the underdogs covering as well. So I wouldn't be like jumping into the Tigers plus 7.5, but that's the way I'd slightly be leaning, but I'd want a few more points. That's why I'd go the either side, 1 to 12. Saturday afternoon, Titans at home to the Rabbitohs. Gold Coast are small favorites, 1.5 points. Both sides come into this off the bye. Rabbitohs had the big win against the Eels, finally breaking a long run of outs, leading into their bye. And then the Gold Coast Titans coming off a big win against Broncos on Sunday before their bye. This is a game where I do like the Titans. I think they're the better side. I feel like South Sydney's being slightly overvalued here for that win against the Eels, who, the Eels were, if you compare them the week prior against the Rabbitohs to last week against the Sharks when they had Moses and Gutherson back, they are a totally different side. And I feel like just the Rabbitohs being a slightly overvalued. Both sides really poor defensively. That's why we've got a 54.5-point total. That's the highest total as it currently stands. Could go down a little bit, but I probably doubt it. But that is the highest total we've seen so far this season. We did have a 53.5, but you rarely see numbers pushing that mid-50s. In attack-wise, the Titans are the better side. So I do like the Titans to win. Probably would just take them on the money line and look to get as close to that $1.90 mark as I can instead of laying 1.5 points if I can get $1.86 or something like that by shopping around the different companies. That's the way I'm likely going. Rabbitohs do have a really good record against them, winning the past 8 and covering the past 5. But I think Gold Coast turn it around here. They've been playing a lot better this season and are at home here. Total points line, that's a complete stay away from me. Both these sides, poor defensively, but not that strong defensively, but they can definitely leak points, and their previous matchups have been high scoring with 5 of the past 6 going over. But I think the number is a little bit too high. But Titans to win. Cowboys versus the Warriors. Cowboys 6.5-point favorites here. This is a matchup where the home team has dominated, winning 9 of the past 12. 9 of the past 11 also decided by 1 to 12 points. So that's probably the way I'm going to be leaning with my bet in this game, is taking either side to win by 1 to 12. Definitely not ruling out the Warriors. The last couple of weeks have been better than their month prior to that. So potentially they've turned a slight corner. Playing the Cowboys in North Queensland, though, is a tough ask. They've won 3 straight. Got over the line last week against the Roosters. But Warriors coming in off the bye, they should be fresh enough and a chance of winning this as an outsider. But just want a slightly more value, but lean towards them at the plus 6.5, or either side, 1 to 10, 1 to 12 is probably the way I'm leaning. The Warriors have also won the last 2 against the Cowboys, winning outright at $3.70, 26 to 12 in North Queensland early last year, and then as a favorite at home, 22 to 14. So I think they're a chance of winning this game. So lean towards them at the plus 6.5, but also do like the play around either side, 1 to 10 or 1 to 12. The total at 50.5, 9 of the past 12 head-to-head have gone under, and we're getting a much higher total this time around than we've seen in the 2 matches last season between these 2 sides. For me personally, I have this total set at 46, so it is definitely a couple of points higher than I'd be expecting. So leaning towards the under, but I prefer the side in that game as opposed to the total. Saturday night, the Broncos take on the Sharks at home. Broncos have won and covered 3 of the past 4 against Cronulla. They come up 5.5-point favorites here. Key for this game most likely is going to be whether Nicho Hynes backs up from Origin. That's going to be the key factor for this game. There has been reports during the week that he's missed training sessions with the Blues with the calf injury, and he did miss games with the Sharks prior, and the last game with the Sharks against Panthers, he missed a majority of the game. So whether he lines up on Saturday night is going to be crucial. If he does play, then definitely keen on the Sharks at around the plus 6 mark. If he doesn't play, then it's probably going to be a stay away game for me in this matchup. But like the Sharks, if Hynes plays, Cronulla are the better side numbers-wise. Definitely defensively, even though they've been lacking a bit the last couple of weeks. I think that'll be the key area for them to improve, and they should be able to lock down the Broncos. But if he doesn't play, then it makes it a really tricky game, and Broncos likely win as favorites. Storm versus Newcastle. The Storm are big favorites here, minus 12.5. If this game, if Newcastle didn't get absolutely demolished by the Bulldogs last week and only scored 2 points, and that game didn't happen, then you would be looking at this game at the Knights plus 12.5 and be thinking, how the hell are they 12.5-point underdogs, even though they're playing in Melbourne? However, and they've also won and covered the past 2 against Melbourne earlier this year, winning 14 to 12. Melbourne were without players there, and then at the end of last season, 26 to 18. Melbourne did win the 11 games prior to that from 2022 and prior. But obviously, you got to keep in mind Newcastle's performance at home last week. So it makes it a very, very tricky game to bet into, and probably one to just stay away from. Expect the Storm to likely win. Be surprised if they do lose at home. However, I do think the line is a couple of points higher than it really should be if you look at the overall of these teams for the season. Total at 46.5. 5 of the past 8 head-to-head have gone under. But interesting, this has been a matchup where the total points has been pretty much spot on over the most of the recent matches. In 7 of the past 8 games, the total points line, the final score for both teams combined has finished within 6 points of this total number. So that kind of gives you the opportunity, if you want to just follow that trend in and taking total match points margin, say the 42 to 48 point range, and having it fall between that number, gives you a strong chance of hitting that. Then Panthers versus Eagles. Penrith 9.5 point favorites. I think that line is slightly too big. The Seagulls have had a little bit of a rough run recently, losing games to the Dolphins and Broncos, and then losing a game that they should have won against Canberra, but turned it around a bit prior to their bye with the win against the Melbourne Storm. So they're going to be fresh coming into this game off of that win. And I think just that total, the line at plus 9.5 does look slightly high. If I get plus 10.5, then I'd say the Seagulls would very likely be a bet in this game, assuming Cherry Evans backs up. But with this game, the late game on Sunday, definitely expect that he would be. Penrith have won 8 of the past 9, so they do have a really good record in this matchup. But the Seagulls won the game earlier this season, 32 points to 18. So they do have that recent success against the Panthers early on this season. And we're only 2.5 point underdogs there at home. So now they have to go into Penrith to win this game, but I feel like there's been just too much of a shift there with the line from their most recent meeting. I think the Seagulls can get this done at the plus, assuming Cherry Evans does play. And then on Monday, final game of the round, the Bulldogs take on the Parramatta Eels. Whether the Eels can hold form from how they turned it around last week against the Sharks compared to their week prior is the big question mark. Don't think they deserve to be favorites here, though, against the Bulldogs. Canterbury are the number 2 defensive side in the league this year, so they should be able to lock down the Eels' attack enough to give themselves a solid chance of winning this game. And the Eels still are conceding almost 30 points a game this season. It's currently at 29.5. So to have a team conceding that many points and being that poor defensively, I just definitely can't have. So like the Bulldogs here, I would be keen in getting a plus 2.5 just to, get that little bit of extra insurance. But if I can't get that, I'd rather the 2.12 instead of the plus 1.5 for $1.90. Eels do have a good record, winning and covering the past 4 against the Bulldogs, but this Canterbury side this season has been a lot better, especially over the past couple of months. They did meet in round 1 with the Eels winning 26-8, but a lot has definitely changed since then. So like the Bulldogs to win. Big total trend on this game. 15 of the past 18 head-to-head have gone under. With that total at that number, if the Bulldogs continue their form defensively, like the only side in the past 7 weeks they've conceded over 20 points to has been Canberra, and that was only one time, then I'd lean towards the under, especially with that trend backing it with so many of their recent matchups going under. But yeah, I like the Bulldogs as the main play there in the last game. So to quickly recap, Dragons, Tigers, probably a stay away game, slight lean towards the under, purely based off that trend. And also lean towards either side, 1 to 12. Titans versus Rabbitohs, like the Titans to win there. Cowboys versus Warriors, lean towards the Warriors plus 6.5, but looking for a little bit of extra insurance. So potentially either side, 1 to 10 in that game. Then Broncos versus Sharks, we'll take Sharks plus 6 around that number if I can get it, if Nico Hines does back up. Storm versus Knights, probably a stay away game for me, that one. Panthers, Seagulls, I like the Seagulls at around the plus 10 mark if Cherry Evans backs up from Origin, and then Bulldogs in the final game of the round on Monday. That's how I'm looking at playing it. Hopefully this video gave you some insight into the betting trends for their recent matchups. You can definitely pause the video, read through, see what the odds are, what the totals have been, use that in your decision making. How I personally make all my bets is using statistics and analysis, not just, of teams I like or don't like, or who I think's going to win, or who I think's, a good team or a bad team. It's purely based on statistics and form, and obviously which players are going to be lining up for the team that week. All the data analysis and all the betting tools I use, you can get in the Bet Finders. I'll put a link in the description for that. That's also where you can get every single bet I'm making, not just for the NRL, but for all sports and every single day, because I bet American sports as well. Over the past week, we've won 16 of our past 18 bets. All the bets posted the night before for the following day's games. And kind of that's the way I bet myself majority of the time as well. I don't really bet early. This weekend, though, is a real prime example of where you don't want to rush in to put your bets on. Definitely hold off closer to kickoff for a lot of these games, because you want to make sure that which players are going to be lining up for their teams. So good luck. Hope you guys have a great and successful weekend on the NRL. Enjoy the State of Origin as well on Wednesday night. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this all season long. And I'll talk to you guys soon.